So
Yep.
what we're doing today is having a look at how managers save 10 or more hours a week and create an even higher performing team, okay, which is something that so many of my clients have benefited from, but so many struggle with. But firstly, a little bit about me. Um, I like my sport. I like to keep fit. There's a photo of me on the right doing a fun run, which I do occasionally still these days. Did a few over the years, quite a few. I love AFL Collingwood, so I'm a Collingwood member. Go along to most games, and there's a photo of me with my partner and my son a couple of years ago when Collingwood did it right and won the grand final. And then in the middle, there's a photo of me facilitating, or as the group on the left-hand side, as the facilitator of one of the residential leadership programs that I've run many of over the years. And that's a reflection of also my passion, my purpose. What I've come to see is that good leaders really have a positive impact on people's whole lives, and poor leaders have quite a negative impact. So, what my purpose is to create more effective and engaging leaders so there's more happy people out there in the world. So, just a little bit more about my background. I became a manager in my late 20s after being one of the high performers in the team. I didn't have any training, made lots of mistakes as I was trying to figure things out as I was going along, trying to get better by trial and error. I thought I was doing better than actually what I was. I thought I was doing pretty well, but in reflection, I wasn't doing that well, really. But I worked hard and I worked long hours for a long time, thinking that's going to be a key to being effective. But eventually, I got some leadership training and coaching. And then I improved more in the next 12 months that I had in the previous 7 years as a real leader. Then others started to notice. And then they also started to ask me to help them, guide them, and coach them. And so since then, I stepped out of corporate and became a full time leadership coach and facilitator. It's about 15 years ago. And I've trained over 1,500 people, coached more than 300 managers, and helped these managers work less hours and have a balanced life. Okay, totally different perspective. And yet also get promoted and earn more in many cases, be able to hit targets and have a more motivated team, yet still increase their job satisfaction, not feel under the stress and overwhelm, which is what most managers are feeling. So how are most managers going these days? Well, this is what the research shows us. There's many different ones out there with Leadership IQ and Gallup and Harvard Business School. What we see clearly is that managers are even less engaged than the average employees. So their engagement scores are quite low, right? And burnout is one of the number one reason managers are less engaged. They're feeling overwhelmed, or they're feeling like they're heading towards or could be a candidate for burnout. They feel like they have a huge amount of tasks and responsibilities. So overwhelm, 70% of managers are experiencing overwhelm and ongoing work stresses. Okay, and this has stopped them from being at their best. And the managers also say that they feel like they've been set up for failure rather than success. Over 80% feel that their organizations could have done more or a lot more to set them up for success in their role. So it's a real challenge for people coming into management, or even people who've been in management for a while, with this really pressure of get a lot done, get things done quickly. So let's take a moment to have a check in and see how you're going with a few key things. Firstly, how do you think you're performing right now? Okay, so giving yourself a rating out of 10 as a leader, where 10 out of 10 is what I call a personal best. We take that from sort of like a sports approach. Whereas if you're a runner or a swimmer, you'd have a time that would be your personal best. It's achievable. It's your best. That's the equivalent of 10 out of 10. Five is, you're pretty average in terms of your view of your performance. And, one is down the bottom. So really thinking about how are you going, and just make a note of that or have that in your head. And we'll come back to that in just a minute.
Yep.
The next thing to reflect on is, how are you going with the hours that you work per week? Okay. Where 10 out of 10 is the ideal balance, right? 5 out of 10 is that you're working more hours than you want. noticeably, consistently. And then down at 1 or 2 is that it's really a struggle with the amount of work and hours that you've got and that you're doing on a weekly basis consistently. And then the next one to think about is, to what extent do you have all of the tools and resources you need to be at your best? Okay, so 10 out of 10 is you have everything you need. 5 out of 10 is you have some, but there's a lot of stuff missing. And 1 or 2 is you're still trying to figure out most of it yourself on the fly as you're going along. So how do you feel you're going in these areas?
Look, I'd say for myself, I'd probably rate myself as a 6 to 7 out of 10 for the first one, for
Yep.
how I'm performing. And that's probably more maturity and growing into space.
Yep.
How do I? Um, I'd say hours I'm pretty good with, but that's probably also uh, job specific as well. I think I've got a relatively supportive team at the moment.
Right.
And then the tools, I think the tools is probably one of the biggest challenges. I work in a government organisation, and it's more probably not so much tools as processes, but they interrelate very heavily. And I think that's probably a great way.
Okay. All right. So that's an important insight to have. And it's great to hear that things are going well in terms of the hours. I don't hear that all that often.
Yep.
And interesting to hear what you said about where you're performing. Because if we then go across to hear what many other people have said when I ask these questions, is that the majority, over 80%, rate themselves between 3 and 6. You're at that sort of higher end slightly, 6 to maybe 7.
Yep.
So you're very similar to a lot of other people. And a lot of people talk about that it kind of can fluctuate quite a few points, just depending on what's happening as well. So the interesting thing there, and feel free to jump in and share where you're at. There's a lot of these people, they want to be 8 to 10 out of 10 on a more consistent basis, but they're not really sure what they need to do to take that next couple of steps or step up to be at that higher performing level.
Yeah.
And how are you from that perspective? Do you feel like you know what you need to do? Or because there's two sort of things, you know what you need to do, that something's getting in the way, or you're still a little bit unsure what we need to do to take those steps?
I think, as I said, one of the greatest challenges I see is the time management of poor processes that you work in amongst, and part of that's performance development and various other things, and very team specific as well. So the larger your team, the more you take on. The smaller your team, the less you have to carry. And so I've been very lucky with a small team,
Yeah.
but I can see managers around me that are failing heavily because they've got quite large teams and a lot of time burden on them.
Yeah, and that's a really, really interesting point, and it's a good one to bring up because it's some of the things that a lot of managers talk about just as part of their career is that if I want to grow, get a bigger team, get a promotion, progress in some way, does that mean that more stress and more overload, more hours automatically come with it? And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So here's roughly what it looks like with people in these different categories. The ones that are down lower have low confidence, high workload. They're doing a lot of the work themselves, especially the complex work, and also fixing the issues and the problems. And they feel like that's just ongoing. They don't have time to be strategic or develop others. Those that are in the middle, around about that 6 out of 10, it can be on a bit of a roller coaster. Sometimes things are going well, sometimes they're not. They're trying to improve themselves, but it's hard to make it stick, and they fall back into old habits. And again, strategic time is limited, and often not as effective as it could be. So there's still this level of stress or feeling of overwhelm. And ideally, what we want is people to be 8 to 10 out of 10, consistently very high confidence, and being able to engage and empower their team, and then still also hold them accountable so they also become high performers, right? And have a way that you know that you can spend time being strategic and proactive, and you add extra value because you've made the time to do that and think from that perspective. So that's what we're encouraging people to all be looking at. And what we're going to look at here in a little bit more depth is some ways that you can save some time, quickly save 5 to maybe 10 hours a week. And one of the things we'll be looking at is meetings. Second one we'll be looking at is email, and we'll go into more detail on each of these. The next one's bigger step up is about capacity and planning. And then the next one is about leadership effectiveness and how you're getting individuals and your team to work and operate. Yep. Okay. And feel free to jump in and say whether some of these you've got totally on top of and others that you want to go into more detail about. That's happy to tailor it for what you want there.
Right.
All right. So the first thing I hear about is that so many people talk about being in many meetings every day. Some days meetings just seem to be back to back to back, and that doesn't allow them to be very effective at all. So one of the first ways to start getting control of time and being more effective is to stop going to some meetings. Okay. Now, when I say that to people for the first time, especially when I'm coaching them through a program, almost all of them have a bit of a pushback and go, oh, I don't know whether I can do that. So it is about really thinking about how come it is that you're going to all of these meetings. Do you need to be a bit more assertive? Do you need to be able to let go and get rid of the fear of missing out, or maybe the fear of offending somebody by not accepting their meeting invitation, when it really would be much more effective for you to be spending your time on something else?
I think I've probably mastered this element where, very much if someone invites me to a meeting, I'll be asking them what the agenda is and why we're having the meeting. And that very quickly pushes people back and makes them go, is there a need? And, making sure that there is a genuine need to have the meeting. So I feel like this element is probably good for me.
Okay, great. You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I encourage people to do. And here it is, exactly what you're asking for, the purpose, the agenda, and be sharp with your meetings. So you've already been implementing this, and hopefully that's already helped you along and getting less meetings, but also the meetings then are more effective. Is that what you're finding?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well done. Okay. And sometimes also part of it is helping others grow by getting them to go to some of these meetings for you instead of you attending.
Yep.
All right. So the next one to look at is email. What we seem to have got into is the situation where most people are checking their email all the time. They've got notifications on. And by email here, I also include all of our Teams messages and direct messaging and things we're getting as well. And so by default, it means we're checking them or looking at the notifications on a regular basis, and it becomes a default to-do list, which comes so accidentally as a prioritization tool. Whatever pops up next is the next thing I look at, and it impacts significantly what I choose to do next. So
this is probably a shortfall in my area, I'd say.
Okay. So one of the big things here to save time is to change your mindset from consistently looking at email and believing, taking on this, and the pressures are set up internally as well, that there's this expectation that we're looking at our email all of the time. Well, what we want to be doing is change that mindset to recognize that email is a communication tool, all right? It shouldn't be what is determining what I do next. And change it so that you are taking control of your time, being proactive about it, and checking email in time blocks throughout the day rather than just having it pinging at you all day and distracting you and then taking up essentially your mind space as to what you should be thinking about or doing next. Right? Mm-hmm. And so that means at times you are actively ignoring email and messaging in order to focus on things that have more importance and a higher priority. Okay. So that takes a bit of work to put your mindset together to work that way, but it significantly improves your effectiveness and your proactivity in what you're working on.
Yep.
All right, and we can go into more detail if we have time around that. The other thing to consider doing, you may already do this. Most people usually have got some, and they could do more, is creating email rules so that they're not having to handle every email all the time, all coming into their inboxes. And it's about getting clear on how you want to set up some of those rules. But the key thing to start thinking about is that the emails that come in that are not really that important for you to act on shouldn't go into the inbox.
Yep.
Right? If they're because they could be useful for reading a newsletter, or because someone CC'd you just to have let you know in case you need to know something as a backup. They're the things that shouldn't go into the inbox, and you should try and get it so as many of those bypass the inbox, and it reduces what you've got to work through from the emails coming in. And it's also about telling people about that so they know that there's a whole bunch of emails that you won't read straight away. Perhaps you might never read if you don't need to go back to them for any reason.
Yep.
And that's much better and clearer than people expecting that you will read every single email that you're sent or CC'd on. Okay.
Yep.
There's a bit of work to do in communicating with people and changing mindset around that. But a key part of it becomes that if people want an urgent response, email or even messaging is not the best way to get hold of you.
Yeah.
So then you change this. All right, you should be reading your email every 3 minutes and responding. Okay. All right. So the next one to have a look at is understanding our capacity and looking at the fact that to-do lists don't work, and how we should be looking at understanding what we can do and planning around that. The first thing to do is to know your bigger picture goals and keep those in mind.
Yep.
What tends to happen most of the time for us is we get busy, we get caught up in the email, as we've just been talking about, and it goes out of our mind what our bigger objectives are on a day-to-day basis. Okay, like we kind of know they're there, but we're not making a connection to them on a day and a weekly basis and a monthly basis. What we want to do is make sure there's the connection there by having the higher level goals and then breaking them down. And then our planning on a weekly, not doing a to-do list, we're planning on a weekly basis, and the weekly plan should directly connect to the 30-day targets, which then connects us through the 60, 90, etc. Milestones that we've got to achieve our bigger objectives.
Yeah.
Okay. So this way, we're always looking at and thinking about what progresses us to our most important objectives. Now, do you do any sort of planning, weekly planning, to-do lists, any of these sort of things?
Yeah, so I'm continuous improvement manager. So definitely have a lot of things where we've got that forward view of where we need to go. So relatively good in this space, but I think there's always need to refine, and I think be more targeted in those areas as well.
Yes. Okay. Great. So you sound like you're doing more than most with your role and the way that you approach things.
Yep.
So one of the things that I consider, I suggest you look at maybe fine tuning is that weekly planning, and really being stronger on blocking out times for the really important tasks. Okay. And recognizing what you can fit in a week, and what's not going to fit in. So one of the things that we need to look at is having how all of this fits together, and saying no to things and communicating that at times that things are either not going to get done or they're not going to get done in the next week or 2 weeks or whatever the block of time is. And this is just as important for balancing out your whole life. All right. So that if there's, as part of getting you to what you want to achieve as a whole life level of happiness, balance, satisfaction, you consider those things that you would want to do outside of work, whether they're family things, things with kids, things with health. So you've got them in mind also in terms of looking at what's happening across a week and what your capacity is.
Yep.
Okay.
I think family is one of the biggest blessings here, where you have a excuse outside of work to go to that won't compromise.
Good. It's good that there's that understanding and flexibility built into that, and then it's just making sure that you actually choose to use that flexibility.
Yeah.
So what we find here is when people sit down and work through this kind of a process, they recognize that everything that's in their head that they think they would like to do, or in some ways might be expected of them, it just can't all be done, and it can't all be done in a short term. So that becomes about recognizing what not to do and making that decision about that and communicating about that, rather than just always being busy trying to do everything and trying to catch up, which pretty much never happens. Okay. All right. Happy to keep moving on from that one.
Yeah, look, my only reflection there is, I think when that's where burden and over, burnout comes from, is actually having too much on your plate, not being able to clear it off.
Exactly. And it's about also, even though there's a lot on your plate, you keep trying to work through to get it all done. And what we're talking about here is identifying what can realistically fit in, and that changes people's feeling about that overload and overwhelm by recognizing what's possible and then doing something to change the extra workload that they've got. Even if that just means communicating it's not going to fit in this time frame.
Yep. I think one of the challenges I see is people committing others to work that they haven't agreed to. And so they come down and they're like, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how much we're going to do it with. And it's like, then there's a very, you've got to be quite strong to push back on that and say, that's great, someone else has agreed to that. We haven't discussed or agreed to this.
You're exactly right, and that's a key point. So it becomes about that strength, that assertiveness, being able to influence and push back to have those discussions.
Yep.
And a key part of it becomes having a version of something like this. So you've actually got something concrete and planned out that can help you with that discussion.
Yep.
Most people haven't got something mapped out like this. So when they try and have the discussion about we haven't got the resources for that, they don't have much to back them up.
Yep.
So that's another part of what we're looking at here. And you're right. It's a skill to learn to be able to be strong and be assertive in these situations. And that's some of the elements of being highly effective as a leader. Okay. So the next part is about leadership skills and how we go about things. And many managers say to themselves at times, it's just easier to do it myself. Or when I do it, I know it'll be done right. But this actually means they're sabotaging themselves, mostly from being at their very best.
Yeah.
And even though it means something in that moment gets done, it actually means that you're not
You'll be
setting
doing it
yourself
forever.
exactly, exactly. All right. And the interesting thing is that the more that you do it, the more that others expect you to do it. And then you fall into, and then you get some of these things where it feels like the right thing to do, like protecting your team by failure, by stepping in and fixing a situation or taking over their work or improving their work. Or giving them quick answers. This is one of the things that I did early days, giving them all the answers and the quick answers to make sure they keep going. You know, yes, you got a question, here's the answer. Go, off you go, get it done. Or telling people exactly what they need to do. Here, I'm giving you this project, this task, do this, 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 and this. So they do it the way you would do it, because you know that's the way that it'll get done well. But these are actually the things that stop managers and leaders from being at their very best and often stop them from getting promoted as well. I feel like they're the right things to do. Logically, they seem like that, but it leads to more overwhelm and burnout because it leads to more and more of the work building up and relying on you as the manager and the expert.
Yeah.
Do you any of that sort of stuff? Do you relate to?
Yeah, look, I think those people, I've dealt with some of that as well. Definitely around the micromanaging, I guess you'd call it, where I've encountered that in the past where, Matt comes in with his way and this is the way we're going to do things and then tries to be prescriptive about it. Learning over time that, to let go and let others. But definitely a trait that I've had to work hard on.
Most people do. And as I said, in many instances, it feels like the right thing to do. It's just the bigger picture where you recognize that it's not actually going to be effective for you. And what becomes much more effective is having the right approach and the right skills to get things done through others.
Yeah.
And a key foundation for that is about making sure that you're building trust with people and showing that you believe in them and you want to empower them and really empower them, fully empower them, not give them something to do, but then come and look over the shoulder and then fix it if it's not quite at the standard that you want it to do. And that means letting them go in some ways that you might not do things, but it helps them. And it also means that there will be some things along the way that maybe aren't at your standard, or you might consider as a type of a failure, but that's part of the learning process. Okay. And it also becomes an important part of this becomes about thinking about creating a succession plan, because one of the main reasons for both overwhelm and overload and also stopping your career is that the senior manager is doing so much, especially of the complicated stuff, that there's a big gap between what the manager is capable of doing and the next person down the line.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So one of the key things here is that helps you along is to use proven leadership tools. So rather than just continually trying to figure it out by trial and error, is to get the tools that have worked for hundreds, thousands of other people over years, decades, and put them in place and use them with a bit of help rather than trying to continually figure it out every day by yourself.
Yeah.
And so that becomes about how you will then develop into a high-performing leader that has a high-performing team.
Yeah.
And when you're doing all of these things here, what happens is that after an initial investment in time, your people step up much more significantly, and therefore it puts you in a position where things are getting done by your team members at a higher standard than ever before. So it reduces your workload. then it sets you up, if you want to be able to take on bigger teams or be promoted, if that's your choice. But it means you've got that choice because you now can apply this same approach, whether it's 4 people or 10 people or 20 people or 50 people. Okay. You can apply the same sort of approach because it is getting things done through others and empowering them instead of you being the one that's having to be over the top of driving and ensuring things get done and taking all of the hard stuff on.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's some things to think about moving forward. Lots of people have this sort of kind of information. I think this is a bit more fine-tuned than most, but there's lots of leadership stuff out there, okay, and that works. But most people don't change. Right? They hear this stuff, they read books, they don't make a change. So one of the things to do is think about what will it cost you if you don't change, okay? Is it around burnout, overwhelm, stress? How's it going to affect your growth and promotion? How would you feel if you're not progressing in the same sort of place in 3 years' time? Okay. Because a lot of people hear this stuff, yep, I sort of get that. I'll go and give it a go and see what happens, but they don't do it. One of the options is to get help to do it. And that's when you fast track yourself to being at your very best as a leader, yourself or the people who are other people in similar situations. And then on that fast track, now you have consistently high confidence, right? Because someone's guiding you and you are using all of the tools along the way, the proven tools. You have a high-performing, highly engaged team. Okay. And that opens up multiple career options. So here's just a couple of examples. I don't know whether you can read these as you're traveling along or not.
I'm sitting in the car, but I'm not traveling anymore. So, yeah, good with that.
Yeah, so just have a quick scan of those. I won't read them out word for word, but just a couple of examples about improvement.
Yeah.
Through doing my programs and about the difference, applying the right sort of knowledge and fine-tuning things, which makes a big difference rather than just knowing the higher level MBA or, broad leadership approaches.
Yeah.
And so it's thinking about, is leadership coaching something that would be, useful, effective, beneficial for you? And that's something you can think about. And if you want to learn more about it, then you can email me and we can book in a time to have a chat more specifically about what that would look like for you.
Yep, that sounds great. Yeah, look, I think it's definitely something on my something that I've thought about. Probably at the moment, not something I'm really going for, but I think in the months ahead, it's definitely something that I will consider. So a little bit about me. I've been with the organisation I've been for about 6.5 years now.
Yep.
May stay, may go. I'm feeling like it's probably time to change the neural pathways. Now that might be within the same organisation, but it's I will see what opportunities present themselves over the next 6 months. But at the same time, I'm looking at various other things. So consulting is one thing that's on my radar.
Right,
Starting an organisation and building it from the ground up. Recognise that comes with many challenges, and a toolkit like this is very handy. A check-in once a week, once a month is definitely very powerful.
Yes, absolutely. That can be a huge help and beneficial, especially if you're going out on your own, because there's you're missing the group and the network that you've been working with if you're in an organisation.
Yeah, and I think most importantly for myself, it's not just about me, but it's about team as well. And so if I did have an organisation, I see a lot of organisations investing into training that's repeated on an annual basis, but I go, something like this, where it's time management, it's empowering people, it's giving people time back in their day, as well as making your organisation more effective. I think it's very powerful, as well as not having to listen to the manager. It's
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And just to give you a quick snapshot of the main program that comes out of this, I do tailored coaching, but the main program that comes out of this is a combination of online videos that have the proven processes and going
yeah,
with our worksheets and the models. So you've got the documentation of the processes. And then also live weekly coaching. Um,
yeah,
so the idea being it's about helping you to change. It's not about giving you just content and saying good luck. It's about helping you make that change in your behavior and your approach. And that's why I want to have the coaching. It's a small group coaching
yeah.
as part of the program. Um, and I've packaged it up in a way that it's much more affordable than most of the leadership executive coaching programs out there.
Great, perfect. Sounds
Cool.
good.
Good.
Look, that's really good. Really nice to meet you as well, and definitely we'll consider this in the months ahead. As I said, probably a busy 3 months ahead for me,
Yep.
and I think post that we'll definitely touch base, and I can at least give you a bit of an understanding of where I'm at as well. I'm in the process, as I said, looking at a contract at the moment. It's very ground up. So I've got an organisation stood up, have done for some time. It's been inactive, but there's a panel that's come about recently, which has raised my eyebrows. And it's really a case of leveling up and putting in for that panel, albeit I think it's designed for a lot of larger players. They're trying to encourage smaller players to come into it. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, it sounds interesting. Well, good luck with that. And just put it out there. I'm happy, free of charge. If you want to bounce something off me along the way as you're going through this stuff over the next 3 or so months,
Yeah,
if you just want to have someone external, different to have a quick chat, bounce an idea off, please feel free to reach out and happy to have a short chat.
fantastic. Look, really appreciate your time, Michael. And as I said, we'll be in touch.
Okay, great to meet you. Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being
All the
here.
best. Cheers. Yeah,
Enjoy your
bye.
day. See ya.
Likewise. Bye.